The following is a local resident producer's program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of Oshkosh Media, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm your host Cheryl Hentz, and we've got some folks here with us tonight that two of the three have never been here before, but we're so happy that they're here. We're going to be talking about the Menominee Park Zoo here in the city of Oshkosh, and helping us with that conversation is the Oshkosh Mayor, Steve Cummings, to my right, and to my left we have two new people to Eye on Oshkosh. Memuna Kahn is directly to my left, and Jason Trembly to her left. So thank you very much for being here, guys. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
I know that there's a lot of things now that school is in full swing and lots of things going on with the city, so I know that there's a lot of things that are drawing people's time and attention. So we appreciate very much you coming in. So they are all members of the Oshkosh Zoological Society Board, and we're going to be talking about the zoo, as I said earlier. There's some big expansion plans in place for expanding the zoo. We want to talk about that, just talk about the zoo in general, and talk about an upcoming major fundraiser that they have going on. So lots of things to cover in the next 57 minutes, so we're going to jump right into it. So tell us about, I don't know who wants to take this first, but tell us about the zoo in general. How long has it been around? How has it changed over the years? Talk to us about that.
Sure. Well, you lived here. Maybe you should start.
I recall going to the zoo when I was a little boy. I mean, a little boy. I have taken my children there. I now take my grandson there. It has changed radically since I was young. My one memory is of a black bear in a very small cage wandering. It was kind of pathetic to see this black bear just...
And he had a tire hanging. A swinging tire.
Yeah, that's my one memory.
That's my memory of the zoo too.
But it's just it's a different environment now than when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm. Do you know, Steve, how long the zoo's been around?
Memuna maybe
19. Well, I was a little boy then.
Yeah.
1945. Mm-hmm. Okay, so a very long time, and it's grown in size. It's grown in appearance and what you have in the zoo over the years. It's still in the same place, but just bigger now. Mm-hmm. Is there a charge to get into the zoo?
At this time, the admission to the zoo is free.
It is.
And that is from the contribution of a gracious donor in the community.
Okay, very good. And when you say at this time, is that just for a certain period of time, or does that go until the money sort of exhausts itself?
The plan, and there is a plan in place to keep the zoo free into the long distant future, so.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, to whoever that wonderful donor is, thank you.
This has been going on for a number of years, too.
It has, yeah.
So is this person still alive, or did this come from an endowment or a trust or something that they set up for the zoo?
This person's still alive and active in the community, attends our board meetings from time to time.
Okay. Well, then thank you very much, for sure.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about your board. How large is the board?
The board right now is 9 people.
Okay.
It's been as big as 12 in recent history, but right now we're at 9, and we're definitely looking for more board members to get back up to that 12 number. So.
Okay. So you keep it at an even number as opposed to an uneven number?
Actually, we just want members. We actually don't have a charge to have a maximum number.
Okay.
Right now we've had a pretty stable board. We would like to have more people. We're what you would consider what you would call a working board.
Okay.
So people who join our board are really volunteering their time and their expertise. So for instance, our board members are comprised of representatives from the city, from the Oshkosh Area School District. David Gunlock's on our board. And we also have someone who has a background in marketing and websites, and so they volunteered to develop our website, which is beautiful. And I'm an educator, so I'm interested in the education portion of it.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's the makeup of our board.
Okay. And how often does the board meet?
Once a month.
Okay.
Right. Third Tuesday of every month.
Third Tuesday of every month. And are your meetings open to the public?
They're not open to the public, but if anybody is interested, they can get hold of us through our website, and we definitely entertain having anybody join us and learn about the zoo and what the Zoo Society does.
All right. And so maybe we should clarify this for folks in case they're wondering. Since most city organizations are open to the public, why would this particular organization have its meetings closed to the public?
This organization is not part of the city.
It's not a city entity.
Not a city. It's
Okay.
not like the Landmarks Commission or
Okay.
the Plan Commission. This is a group separate from the city.
Okay. And so that's an important distinction
It
for
is.
people to understand.
Absolutely.
Because when they think of city parks and a zoo in a city park, I think maybe they have the thought that it's because it's operated by the city also.
Correct.
So it gets to be a confusing thing. So I wanted to be sure that people understood that distinction. So how much, when we talk about funding of the park, the city staff that works there, how much funding from the city budget goes into the zoo?
I honestly don't know if it's broken out, the zoo, apart from the whole Parks Department.
Okay.
What we really do as the board, we're raising funds for primarily educational programs. Mm-hmm. We've hired an educational director for the summers to work with kids. Mm-hmm. Some of our funding goes to pay for the animals, and some of the feed, if I'm correct.
Yep.
I guess the best way to describe it is the city of Oshkosh, we're responsible for the brick and mortar, if you will. Mm-hmm. And all these the educational programs is really the foundation, or the board.
The board.
The Oshkosh Zoological Society. That's
Okay.
We're the board of the Oshkosh Zoo Society, and we have membership. We have about 100 members, people who pay dues, basically to support our mission. And you might want to think of us as a friends group. So we're the support group. We're the support wing for the Menominee, the nonprofit support wing for the Menominee Park
Okay.
Zoo.
All right. How much is the membership?
Oh,
The membership ranges from, I think, as little as $15 up to any contribution we're willing to accept. But I think $250 is the highest mark that we have.
Okay.
Specified.
And so it's set according to what age?
Senior membership is $10. There's a family membership,
Okay.
Individual membership, and then higher levels for people who really just want to support the zoo.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
And I think we do. I think we do have some corporate slots, don't we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I like the fact that you have a senior membership bracket because I can finally qualify for some of those things. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's the one advantage of getting older, I guess. So you mentioned the animals, Steve. So are the animals purchased by either the city or the Zoological Society, or are they rented?
The bulk of them are rented. Memuna, I think, have more
Sure.
information on that.
So we have both animals that we own and animals that we rent. So there's permanent animals in the exhibit, and those include the wolves, the elk, the otter, and then some of our education animals. We've got Kiana, the blue and gold macaw, some ferret, and the Russian tortoises, and of course Dash. And so those are permanent animals, and we own them, right? So, for instance, when the otter exhibit opened, I think that was 2014, our society raised money to purchase those otters, and so we gave the city money to purchase those otters.
All right.
Now, every summer, the number of animals that are held by the zoo is larger, right? And we rent some of those animals, and the Zoo Society pays the rental fee as well. And then some animals are actually housed, it's in a partnership with other organizations.
Okay, so what would be an example of an animal that's rented, for example?
The exotics, so Bubba, one of the macaques. Maybe one year we had a camel, the bobcats, and then the domestic. So anything that's not a domestic farm animal.
Okay, non-farm animals.
Yeah, non-farm
domestic.
animals.
This year we had some donkeys, the sheep,
We always have
Goats.
goats, llamas.
llamas.
How do you as a board decide what you want in the zoo?
Oh, you mean what the animals are? We don't actually make that decision. That's not our decision.
Really?
Yeah,
Who
we can
makes that-
contribute to that decision, but
Who makes that decision?
that would be the city. And so
Okay.
Stacy Donnelly, who's the animal specialist who works at the zoo full time, is a Parks Department employee, and Chad Dahlman, who's the manager. They work with the providers to determine what animals that we will be getting each year.
Okay. That surprises me, I guess.
And we can contribute
Sure.
and say, we don't think that this particular animal is appropriate for the size and the space that we have, and they listen to us sometimes. But yeah, that's more of the bricks and mortar day-to-day operation of the zoo.
Okay.
And so, since Stacy's the animal specialist and she's taking care of them, she knows she has a very good idea of what we're capable of at the zoo.
What you can handle and
what the
who-
exhibits can handle as well.
Right. Okay, all right. So who makes the determinations, I guess what I'm trying to figure out how the best way to say this. Does she make the decisions as to the space that each animal needs, or who decides that? You know what I'm saying? Because you can't just put an animal into a really cramped area. They need
Right.
room to move and flourish and be in their own sort of natural environment, if you will. So does Stacy make that determination, or who determines that?
No, I wouldn't say Stacy makes that determination.
Well, there's the master plan. I mean, as we go forward, there's a master plan. How much space will be devoted to a bear exhibit? How much to the eagle exhibit? As we grow, we've worked with a consultant. I think it's out of Stevens Point that's been working with the Parks Department. So they're kind of designing how much space we should allocate for a particular animal.
And what is their expertise as far as how much space an animal needs?
The company is...
Well, the FEH, the company that did the master
Right.
plan with us, they had worked with other zoos in the past, and so
Okay.
there's documentation from the American Zoological, the AZA
Right.
Association,
Yep.
and they have recommendations for minimum sizes.
There we go.
And if you're an
So-
accredited zoo, which we're not at this time, but whenever we build a new exhibit, we build our exhibits within the meeting at least the minimum requirements for accreditation, so that
Okay.
we're not barred from going for accreditation in some distant future.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah, so that's what the minimum sizes are.
Okay.
And
So I want to talk a lot more about that and the master plan, certainly, but we've got a screen on this, so if we can bring that up. You guys have a major fundraiser coming up, and I know we're just sort of jumping into this, but I want to make sure that we get this in, because we've got a lot to talk about when we talk about the master plan. So if we can take a look at the Monster Bash screen, and someone, I don't care who, someone will tell us what it is that this Monster Bash is.
So Monster Bash this is the second annual Monster Bash. It was an idea of one of our board members, and it kind of piggybacks off of Zulaween Boo, which is a children's event that's held prior in the day. So what Monster Bash is essentially an adult costume party. We partner with 10 to 15 different local restaurants to provide alcohol samples, beer, wine, along with food samples. There's a fee of $20. We have music as well, raffle items, 50-50 raffle. So the idea is to come in, enjoy the zoo, and try out some food from some local restaurants. And
Sure. Do people have to dress up in costume? I know some people just hate it. They don't have to dress up if they don't want to, right?
We're not going to turn anyone away.
yeah.
As long as they have that $20, right?
Yeah,
That's the important
You're in for $20. Come as you are. We don't care.
Yeah.
So it's the second annual one, and this is, we were talking a little bit before we started taping here, this is a major fundraiser for you guys. Would it be safe to say this is your largest fundraiser of the year, your main fundraiser?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We do have a handful of other, special events that we do during the year, but this is kind of our mainstay. Year after year, growing and developing the Monster Bash is really the goal.
So how much are you hoping to raise this year through this?
I think $10,000-$15,000 would definitely be the goal.
Okay.
And I think that's achievable. We have some great sponsors this year that helped us get close to the goal and push us closer to that goal. So,
Like corporate sponsors?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Oshkosh Community Credit Union being our major main sponsor, as well as Oshkosh Coil Spring, chipped in and helped us get started. So.
Okay, excellent. So how much did you raise last year in comparison to what you're hoping to get this year?
Last year, it was our first year. We're kind of battling some elements. We ended up raising about $2,000.
Okay.
This year, I hope, cross your fingers, it is an outdoor event. There is a big tent, though, so.
That's good.
And so don't let the rain scare you off.
Yeah.
But I think we have just as many vendors. The same band, Copperbox, they're fantastic. They always draw some people in, and we're not fighting the Badgers. I think there's a Badger game last year. But you know how that goes.
It's like when you plan events in this state, and I'm sure it's like this in other states too, but we are very ardent supporters of our football and basketball and baseball teams around here. So you kind of have to plan events around football and whatever the other events are. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah, we live in Event City too. I mean, just Oshkosh by itself, there's something every weekend going on.
It really is tough planning events. You've got to really go to the calendar and see what is going on that
And even then, I still
weekend.
think you're going to miss something or run into conflicts with something. It's very hard.
That's one of the things I really liked about Monster Bash when we were originally developing the idea. Is it's a unique event. I can't think of any other costume parties that are held annually in Oshkosh. It's the only event in the zoo that's catered towards adults. So it's a lot different environment than people are used to going to the zoo.
Sure. And we talked a little bit earlier before the show started taping again about other fundraising things that you guys have done. I know the events are kind of here and there, but you want to touch on some of the other things that you've done in the last couple of years or so?
Sure. So our first fundraiser, our first attempt at a fundraiser was We Oughter Celebrate.
We Oughter Celebrate.
We Oughter Celebrate.
That's very clever.
Yeah. So we had We Oughter Celebrate, and we did it at the Waters, and it was a really great evening. Same sort of, and then with that model, we had people come in. We had a raptor demonstration. We had some information. And it was primarily members who came and participated, and we raised some money for the otter exhibit. And then a few years later, we did Dancing for the Wolves, and we held it at the Best Western. And it was another one where it was sort of invitations, people RSVP'd, and we raised a little bit of money for the wolves. And just this past year, right now the city is fundraising. In particular, we'd like to be building an eagle exhibit. And so I happened to get into a conversation with Winnebago Audubon, and they wanted to sponsor us, but they also said, why don't we throw a fundraiser? So we tried an event called Birds and Brews at the Zoo on July 19th. And in that case, what we did is we had beer and brats during the evening, so the zoo stayed open for a little bit longer. It was reasonable. It was an admission price, $5 to get in, and then of course you had to pay for the food. And we had an eagle come from Schlitz Audubon, so Valkyrie came, so people could get up close and see the zoo. They could see the plan for the eagle exhibit. They could see where the exhibit was going to be. And then we had some other live raptors for people to get to know, and we had a DNR expert, Steve Easterly, who gave a talk about eagles in Wisconsin.
Okay.
And it was really well attended, and it was families, so it was really very nice.
Sure.
If you've never had a chance to get that close to an eagle, it is cool. It is,
Yes.
they're wonderful animals, majestic animals, so it was really well done.
Absolutely. So you mentioned the eagle exhibit a couple of times, and the eagle exhibit is part of the overall master plan for expansion. Right. But since you mentioned it, we do have a slide of that. And so if we could take a look at that just real quickly, and then perhaps, Memuna, you can... Nope, that's the wrong one, guys. We want the eagle exhibit one. We're trying to find it. This just so the audience knows, we had to add this exhibit in at the very end of, we hadn't planned this, and it just was one that we added in. So let's not worry about it right now. Yeah, when they get it, they can put it up, and we'll find out about it. But tell us about the eagle exhibit that we're looking at, and maybe by then they'll have it up on the screen so we can actually visually see it. There it is, right there. Ask and you shall receive. So that's a little artist rendering there of the eagle exhibit, and there's an eagle, of course. So tell us what that is that we're seeing.
So that rendering is if you were standing on the boardwalk in between the wolf exhibit and the elk exhibit. So there was a little ravine if you looked southward, and that's where the eagle exhibit's going to go. The boardwalk would be extended a little bit, and the eagle exhibit would be tall, and you'd be able to sort of walk around it. Visitors would be able to walk the entire circumference. It's designed in such a way that the eagles would be able to be above visitors, even though you can look down. You can look down into the exhibit. It's high enough that at any point in time the eagles can be above, and we think that's fairly important for animal happiness, not safety, but happiness.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and safetyness of people. Yeah. So people themselves will not be handling these, right?
Correct.
Okay. There's a place in Arizona, the Sonoran Desert Museum, and throughout the entire area they have different stations where eagles, and this is truly built in the desert, and so they come flying in, and they have their gloved hands out, but they have microphones that go throughout the entire area. And so the people who are handling them, if you will, they can explain to people who are stopping at all these different stations, what they're seeing. They tell facts about the eagles. It's really a very amazing thing. So we don't have the space for that kind of thing here, but so that's a nice first start. So when do you think that will be done and operational?
I think next year. There's been some prep work done already at the zoo. I think.
A lot of the major funding is in place. There's still some fundraising left to do as well, but I would say the majority of the funds are already in place as well.
Okay, all right. Eagle exhibit sometime next year, like spring, summer?
I'd say probably later summer.
Later summer, okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so as you're raising money for this entire exhibit, where is it all coming from?
Most of the fundraising comes from individuals in the community, families in the community, help through the community foundation as well. Fundraisers like Monster Bash, like Eagle Extravaganza, all those proceeds are going right to the Eagle exhibit. So those are really the main sources of donation.
So since we're sort of already getting into this, let's talk about the master plan. If we can see that 1.5 master plan concept, please, then we'll bring that up, and you guys can explain to us what it is that we're looking at here.
Okay, so the master plan was put together a few years ago by the community. The Oshkosh Zoo Society was a part of that planning process. Many different plans were sketched out over a course of 2 days, and then this is what they converged on. Some of the main ideas that we want to get across is that the zoo wants to move toward a full-time zoo and to highlight animals that can be taken care of easily and are adapted to Wisconsin climate. And so generally the animals that you see in this plan are native to Wisconsin. And we have it divided up into different areas of Wisconsin. So the North Highland Forest, which would be equivalent to, say, Nicolet National Forest. We've got the Glacial Plains. Horicon Marsh is a very important part of the state, largest freshwater marsh in the country. And then farming is really important to the state as well. And so it has a real regional feel about it.
So as we're looking at this map, if someone, I have to be careful here how I'm addressing this because this show goes out on the radio as well. So for people who are listening to this on the radio, the North Highlands Forest area would be kind of more north, sort of southeast, I believe. And then you've got the Horicon Marsh that's down lower toward the bottom of the screen there, or south for people listening to it on the radio. The farm area would be to the west of that, and then your Glacial Plains area would be up to the northwest area. And another good way of putting it is the North Highlands Forest area is relatively close to the Chief Oshkosh Monument. So that's a way of describing it. So then let's move on to the next one, Menominee Park Zoo educational opportunities. What can you tell us about this that we're seeing right now?
Well, at the zoo, part of the Zoo Society is one of our niches at the zoo is to promote education. So that's kind of what this diagram is showing. So where big component of it is right at where the new entrance would be, and that'd be the welcoming center or an education building. It'd have various rooms in it, a large meeting space. It'd make the zoo a lot more suitable for hosting people in the wintertime. That would be a huge addition to the educational side of things, as well as over in the marsh, interpreting ecosystems, outside activities, a really cool tree house climbing exhibit that was designed by FEH. Also a bear feeding area, the Glacial Plains Conservation Center, visitor tunnel through the prairie dog exhibit, so a tunnel that would actually go into the ground where you could view prairie dogs.
Oh, very cool. That is very neat.
You know, growing up in Oshkosh, the prairie dogs was always my favorite exhibit to go see, and there's a lot of talk about bringing that back to the zoo. Something I'm definitely looking forward to, and that would just be an extra element to bring into
because really anyone who has seen prairie dogs, they see them pop up out of holes, they see them go down into holes, but this is an area where you could go into a tunnel and actually see what they're doing when they do go down in their little holes, right?
Yeah, they're dens.
So that's a neat thing.
Caring for their pups. And
yep, that's a very cool thing.
I'm not sure if they're called pups,
Yeah,
actually.
they're called pups. And
right,
the prairie dog, being the biologist, not really native to Wisconsin, but something that's beloved historically by the people of Oshkosh. It's homage to what the zoo was in the past, and we know it's just a really popular exhibit.
Okay.
And one of the designers that worked on this with this firm, he was also instrumental in the I can never think of the name of it, but it's in Dubuque, and it's a Mississippi River
Center.
So it's tracing the history of that section of the Mississippi. So he was designer for all of the aquariums, a lot of the exterior.
Okay.
So really some top-notch people have worked on this design.
Okay. We have a couple of other slides here that I'd like us to take a look at. The next one would be, it's got 3 different designs here. One is for education and welcome and aquarium, and then we've got a domestic barn area and a service building. So who wants to tell us what each of these are going to be? I think one is pretty self-explanatory, but let's hear about it anyway.
Well, one thing we didn't really talk about when we were reviewing the master plan.
Yes.
We live on this great watershed, you know, in the Fox Valley, and one of the showcases of the Education Welcome Center would be the pond, the lagoon that currently exists in the zoo, and developing some sort of aquatic exhibit there. A lot of opportunities and a lot to talk about there as well. So personally, that's one thing that I'm really looking forward to as this thing unfolds.
Sure. So this diagram right here then, tell us about what we're seeing in each of these diagrams here.
Okay, I'll take, so the Education Welcome Center and aquarium. So this would be the showcase, the place where people would enter. One thing that the zoo is lacking now is an indoor space, which could be used year-round and could be used for educational opportunities. So one thing about the zoo right now is it's only open during the summer yet, and so our educational reach is quite limited because most of the time we're open. Schools are closed. So if we have this educational space, then we can have schools visiting the zoo and having a common area to meet. Another part of this Education Welcome Center are aquariums to sort of showcase what's in the Lake Winnebago system, the Fox River watershed system. So it provides us this really great educational opportunity.
So that would be a freshwater exhibit then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And then, of course, there's classrooms, there's conference rooms. One of the, I guess, selfishly, the Oshkosh Zoo Society would love to have a place to meet. We lament that we don't actually have the space to meet at the zoo, the place that we're trying to support. We try and have 1 visit or 2 visits during the year where the board goes through. If we could meet at the zoo, the conference center, that would be wonderful.
Sure.
It would keep us in touch with the zoo. And of course some office space for the animal specialists and for an education coordinator, for instance.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Service building. What is that?
I think the service building would be kind of similar to the building that's there now. It'd basically be an administrative wing. There could be a vet inside of there, food storage, walk-in coolers for future bears. Bears are going to eat a lot of meat, so having that additional food storage, again maybe a behind-the-scenes meeting area or office where the zoo director could spend some time. That's also currently where education animals are stored as well. Kind of, chinchillas and
the tortoise.
and tortoises and ferrets. They don't fare very well in a typical Wisconsin environment or winter environment at least. So they would store those kinds of things, and then electrical panels and all the kind of
that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Stuff that nobody really cares about except except the board who has to keep them running.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the building that the zoo employees would absolutely love to have,
Sure. Yeah. And then we've got a domestic barn area here too. That if you're looking at this on TV, I think you can see where it says domestic barn. It's in the lower right-hand corner. So tell us what that will involve.
So this has a walk-through area, so people, so guests can walk through the barn and be able to see if the animals wanted to be inside. They would be able to see them in the inside, and then of course there's an outdoor area too. Do you want to add about this one?
It's a bit like going to the county fair, where you get to touch and pet the animals and maybe feed them, or maybe not, but it's more hands-on for kids.
Okay, excellent. Very good. So coming back to some questions then, Jason, you had mentioned about a vet area in that services building. Obviously, it's not going to be a full-time vet.
Right.
How do you provide veterinary care now?
Right now, veterinary care is outsourced to a company in Appleton that we've recently that the city's been working with over the last couple of years. And they'll come in, they'll do their exams right on site. If needed, they can administer medication or sedation or whatever may be needed. right now it's done outdoors or inside of the crib pens built into the current environments, but this would allow the animals to come out of the elements, be inside. I think it'd be a little bit safer for the vets to work on the animals, safer for the animals. So I don't know if that would change very much. I think it would still be an outsourced,
Okay.
But
it gives them an area indoors where they can work and do what they need to do in a better environment, really, than what they have right now. So, okay, very good. And then there is one final screen here that we have, and it's called a phasing diagram, but basically it's, the master plan is put together in phases, and you may veer from this a little bit. Like as we talked about, if people are looking at this, it is a sort of a purplish blue color. It's the third one down there, and that is the North Highlands Forest exhibit, and that's part of the Eagle exhibit is going to go in there. So that's one thing that's kind of being done out of order, if you will. That's part of phase 3. But tell us about the various phases as they're set up and what their approximate costs are, so people have an idea so that they can donate to the zoo.
I like the plan from the standpoint that number 1 is probably the most ambitious and largest costing implementation phase, and that is the education building. Now, as far as exact numbers go, it's been a while, but if I recall correctly, the education building, was about, I was going to say the building itself was going to be about $5 million. And then the surrounding area, I'm sure, makes up the difference. But
so it's $7.2 million for those listening on the radio.
And if you can see the rest of it, basically total, all said and done, the total plan is about maybe $15 million. So just about half of it is in that phase 1. But it would be great, like Memuna had mentioned, that having that resource available to the community would be wonderful. So I think, why not take the biggest swing at it?
Sure. So a lot of money, many millions of dollars, not much of which will come from the city, or because you're bricks and mortar, what part of this will come from the city, Steve?
A fair amount of it will come from the city.
Okay.
But again, it's budgeting. Money is very tight, and we don't have a lot of money. We don't have a lot of money. We're pinching every penny right now, and I think we'd like to see a lot of community support for the zoo. I mentioned the Henry Violet Zoo in Madison. We were down there this summer, and I was just amazed at how much the community had supported that zoo. You can't walk a foot without seeing something that some company, some family, some individual donated to that zoo. I think we'd like to see that happen in Oshkosh, where it's really a community project. It's there's a lot of community support. It's support. Our focus is on education for kids, and adults might pick up a few things too as they walk through. But I think it's one of those quality of life assets we have, and there are people who don't even know we have a zoo in Oshkosh.
Really?
Yeah. Really.
Wow.
That's
kind of surprising.
Yeah. To Steve's point, I think there are 5 municipal zoos in the entire state of Wisconsin. One of them is here in Oshkosh. So
Marshfield is
Marshfield, Violet, Henry Violet Zoo.
Violet, yeah.
Violet.
Only 5.
Only 5.
So that's surprising to me too, actually.
Most are either
great to see the city just really get behind this effort, like they've done other projects.
Sure. Well, one of the things that Steve, that I'm a big animal rights person and animal welfare person, and so I was very upset to learn that someone had stolen the Russian tortoise, and you guys, as board members, must have been heartbroken over it. I think people who saw it on the news were heartbroken. If they have any feeling in their bodies for animals. And let's face it, an animal is an animal. It doesn't have to be a 4-legged furry dog or cat. It's any animal. It's any sentient being. And someone stole it from the zoo. Now, someone ended up returning it, yes,
Thank you.
and thankfully unharmed. But, you know, my concern is, how do people get into these areas where they can take a big, it wasn't a little teeny tiny little thing, this was a big tortoise.
No, it's not real
She
big.
was only about this big.
Oh, really?
Yes.
The pictures on TV made her look a lot bigger.
So
They
this
really
wasn't.
did.
She didn't take Dash.
Okay.
They took.
Dash
they
is
took,
huge.
they
Dash
took
weighs about 100
Anastasia.
pounds.
So
Okay.
Russian tortoise. She was only about a dinner plate size.
But still, that's big enough that, you know, it's not the easiest thing in the world to get out. Was this tortoise taken during zoo hours, or did they come in after hours? And
I'm afraid that we weren't there, and I'm not sure we can answer all of these questions to this detail. Do you have any?
I don't, but if you look at what people carry as far as bags and satchels, and be very easy to slide this into a bag full of your kids' diapers or whatever, and just walk off with it. I mean, it's
Right, and we have an area where the education animals are a pen where educational animals are put. It's locked, and then it's behind a fence. So the person who wanted to take this animal, and it had to have been, I can say that it had to have been during zoo hours because the animals are taken back into the maintenance building, which is locked at night. So they're only out for a couple of hours. They had to have gone over 2 fences. They had to have jumped over 2 fences to retrieve this this animal.
wow.
And we don't have that much staff at the zoo. We don't have security cameras, which would be wonderful to have. Yeah, I mean, there are weaknesses there.
Sure. So,
And with money, we can fix them.
yes, yes. Well, I think security cameras are a wonderful thing. And, you know, they're not as expensive as they used to be, but we're talking a large area here that has to be covered. When you say that the animals are taken back in the building when zoo hours end, where do the elk go? Where do the wolves go? Are they left
those are
outdoors?
not.
Okay.
The elk and the wolves are in their permanent exhibits. The wolves have several dens to which they can retreat. So wolves, you know, are native to Wisconsin. They have, what's important in that exhibit is that they can get out of the weather. They're essentially, these are wild animals, so they can deal with the elements. So as long as they have running water, food available, and then shelter, they should be okay. I mean, we have enough shade in that exhibit as well. And the elk, they have a holding area in the back of the exhibit that has covered areas that they can go underneath too to get out of the weather.
Okay.
The
Have
otters.
something to add?
I was just going to say the otters actually have pens inside their maintenance building as well, so they do come in and get out of the elements.
And they come in at night.
They come in at night, exactly.
And that I mean, the zoo is moving toward that direction. You would notice in that maintenance plan,
Yes.
the maintenance building plan, there was off exhibit holding areas for animals. Also, you'll see over here cougar
Yep.
and whatnot. And so, as we move forward, exhibits are being built so that they provide that respite.
Okay.
I think if you look at the entrance to the zoo, it's very casual because there's no fee collected. People just come and go without anything being checked. It's just, you know, I guess we're very trustworthy because it is a lot of families, a lot of kids. But
Yeah, and yet there are some very sick individuals in this world, and I think cameras are a great idea. And is that something that you're looking at undertaking, or can be included in part of this expansion plan?
In our conversations with Chad Dahlman, the manager, he has certainly mentioned it, that's on our wish list.
Yeah.
And you know, it also, on the kind of lighter side of things too, it also provide opportunities for like wolf den cams and putting cameras in the perches of the eagle exhibit. So offering some cool new online opportunities for classrooms to
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
spy in on them.
two-sided.
Yeah, right.
It's a good thing. So one of my concerns as I looked at a very ambitious master plan here for expansion, it looks great on paper, it looks beautiful, it's something to be excited about. Does the park have enough space to accommodate this stuff?
Yes.
Yes, it actually hardly expands. It doesn't take up much more space at all.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's so even
It's
though
it's-
there's a lot of different things that are going to be expanded upon, it's not going to be taking up that much space.
Right. The only expansion is they're relocating this monument, and there is no additional expansion on the eastern side.
Okay.
That's all open area right now.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
So most of it is happening within the footprint of the zoo as it stands now.
Okay. All right. Jason, you had mentioned like crib cages. Those are kind of out of date, and they sort of go back to like the 1950s or whatever. Well, we should probably explain for people what a crib cage is.
Right. It's basically a mesh cage that I think ours probably stand about 15 feet tall. They do have roofs on them. We tend to put smaller animals in them. They're rented animals or exotic animals in them. It's pretty much the gist of it, I guess.
Okay. So are the crib cages going to be something that's continued, or are you guys looking to get away from that old way of exhibiting animals?
Yeah, I think long run, definitely crib cages are not in the master plan. But
Yeah.
Excellent. Glad to hear that.
Yes.
but for the time that now we do have them, we should fill them with something. Bring in some new exciting animals
Yeah.
that rotate in and out every
Yeah.
single year.
Yeah.
It gives the current zoo goers something to look at every year. So.
Sure. Steve and I had talked over a year ago already, I think, about the possible effects that Sawdust Days has on the animals at the zoo. And I know that none of us at this table is an expert on animal psychology and that kind of thing,
Yeah,
but
Memuna might.
you are sort of a scientist, right? So do you have some thoughts on what kind of things these animals are experiencing during those 3 or 4 or 5 days?
Do I have thoughts on what they're experiencing?
Well,
I mean, so there's new sounds, new smells.
a lot of activity.
So some of that could be interesting to them, right? That's one way to think of it. But too much of anything can stress them out. And so I would say that just as a citizen, Sawdust Days, especially if they have the bands really close to the zoo, that I could imagine that could be an issue.
but that's not the case, though, right? The bands
think so.
are far away.
I think the bands are far
right?
away.
I think they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Increased foot traffic, I don't think that would be a problem. I mean, we want to show off our zoo, and the animals are used to people.
Sure.
So
I will say at some of our events that have gone later that have been in the zoo, I especially the wolves, they seem to be very curious. You can see them walking the fence line, kind of checking things out, see what's going on. So, I think they're used to seeing people. Like Memuna said, too much of anything's usually not a good thing. But I think it intrigues them to some extent. They seem to be curious about what's happening.
Well, and Sawdust Days this past summer was done in a slightly different way.
It was. Venue was different.
Do you think that had any positive impact on the animals at all?
I think it did. Everything, the drinking portion was all fenced in. It was in the area where they have Rib Fest. So it was further away. It was contained. I think it was a positive move. And there was very few, if any, incidents during Sawdust Days.
So this was like 100% improvement almost.
Well, it was. I mean,
For not just for the animals, but for the city, for the police department,
it was.
for the neighbors
Yeah.
of the park.
Once we convinced the Sawdust Days people that they should charge for a wristband, that seemed to help. They realized they had to enclose the drinking areas.
Okay, good.
That was a good move.
Memuna, you had mentioned earlier about the AZA. And it's gone by different names over the years, but it's actually the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. You mentioned that earlier. And if anyone wants to look it up, they just go to aza.org and you can find it. But they are an agency that does accreditation of zoos and other animal exhibit type things across the country. is the goal to become accredited at some point then? I know you kind of mentioned that, but
Well,
is that the overall goal?
Time frame, I don't, so we're a small zoo. There's only so much we can do in increments. I mean, I would say that's one of, I would love for the Menominee Park Zoo to be an accredited zoo. And you know, you might want to think of it in terms of being labeled organic and being labeled, you know.
Yeah,
I think as I'm committed to the idea that any new exhibits that we build and that we move toward moving away from corn cribs and building exhibits that are sustainable, that are the, you know, accreditation size or larger. Our wolf exhibit actually is larger. It should be a goal. The label itself, I'm not sure yet what hoops we would have to jump through, what cost there is to maintain accreditation, right? Because that would mean that we'd be inspected every year. I'm not sure if that's a cost that the city and the citizens are willing to bear. And if we could do that, yes. If we could fundraise, I mean, the Zoo Society certainly is interested in that. We talk about it every time a new exhibit goes in. Whether or not it's practical and that we can achieve that, that's another story.
Okay.
So I think it's definitely a goal, but
Right.
I don't know when.
Yeah, yeah. No, I get it.
Yeah.
And just for folks at home, I did put this on my little notes here. To achieve accreditation, the zoo must pass an application and an inspection process and then meet or exceed the AZA's standards for animal health and welfare, fundraising, zoo staffing, and involvement in global conservation efforts. The inspection is performed by 3 different experts, typically a veterinarian, an expert in health care, or animal care rather, and 1 expert in zoo management and operations. And then it's reviewed by a panel of 12 experts before the accreditation is awarded. So it's a process.
Really, yeah.
And the accreditation lasts for 5 years. And interestingly enough, less than 10% of the 2,400 and some zoos and animal exhibits in the country are accredited by the AZA. And yet, I like the goal. I think that's a fantastic goal to shoot for, because that says, you know, not only are we one of 5 zoos, municipal zoos in the state, but we're accredited too. And I don't know either what the cost is for something like that, but I think it would show to animal lovers that, you know, you guys are trying to do something right.
Right. But from the city standpoint, I mean, what you're talking about are full-time parks employees, and that is a commitment that the community of Oshkosh would need to sign off on.
I'd also put out there too that our current staff takes wonderful care of our animals, and our exhibits are especially our new exhibits do meet those standards and provide a wonderful home for the animals.
Because I know there were problems in years past. There were problems, let's see, and this I got from the Humane Society of the U.S. When one of their investigators came through. And this was, I don't know exactly when it was, but in the last 10 years, a female white wolf had some very bloody and ragged ears from biting flies. One of the 2 baboons in a corn crib cage again showed extreme stereotypic behavior. The investigator observed the baboon pacing rapidly and continuously, a step to the left, then a step to the right for at least 8 minutes, and they eventually just wore like a path in the concrete. And another baboon was biting his hands and feet, and you know, and then just a few years ago, it seems like a few years ago anyway, we had that incident where that young child got into an area that someone on the staff had left the gate open or whatever, and he got bit by one of the wolves, and the wolf had to be put down. And that was heartbreaking, too.
Absolutely.
I mean, nobody at this table wants to see a child bit by anything, you know, not even a fly. But, you know, the parents didn't have total control over the child. The gate was left open, not pointing fingers here, but the one who suffered in the end was not just the child that got bit, but the wolf was euthanized. And that's a sad thing when an animal is euthanized for doing nothing more than being itself, you know? And so perhaps accreditation would help with some of those things as well. It's not going to help with someone leaving a gate open. We're all humans, and it was a mistake that unfortunately someone had happened to them. But I'm glad to hear that you guys are following, AZA standards at least with respect to your new exhibits and so forth. So have there been any instances in recent years where there have been problems at the zoo where, you've gotten written up, if you will, by a state agency of any kind?
Nothing more.
Not that I know of.
Okay. So that's a good thing.
I do want to add
Yes.
about the the stereotypical behavior by the baboons.
Yeah.
So those are rental animals, and we take. I do know that Stacy and the staff. I work at Ripon College, and I send interns, student interns, to work with Stacy. And one of the things that we're constantly working on are behavioral enrichment devices. So these are activities, these are that you can, things, games, things that you can put into the exhibit that the primate will handle, will have to do problem solving, and also to change up the situation. And these are things that are done at AZA accredited zoos like the Brookfield Zoo, and we spend a lot of time, those interns, the staff, spends a lot of time in the summer trying to figure out and presenting new experiences for those animals so that they're not doing those stereotypical behaviors.
Okay.
That's why there are Legos in one of the cages.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Did you say Legos?
Legos in.
Okay.
Right.
My grandson, what are they doing in there? Can I go?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I know that in the last 10 years, and again, so nothing real recently, but the last 10 years, the USDA had cited the zoo for a few different things, including not having adequately trained employees, handling a newly acquired lion, and the lion was kept in a 15-foot diameter cage, which kind of reminds me of a crib cage, I guess, when you're dealing with an animal that size. Do we have lions at the zoo anymore?
No, and that lion was removed from the zoo after that complaint. It was sent back, and this is a case of...
So he was rented also?
Yes.
Okay.
And many of these things have to do with, I would say that communication between the agency that we rent from and the city, those things needed to be worked out. And so that was taken care of right away, and yes, we haven't had any lions at the zoo.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Well, I think, you guys are doing the very best job that I think you can.
Thank you.
And I think the expansion looks very nice. I'm anxious to see it. It's a huge undertaking. Need a lot of money. So if you're interested in helping to support the zoo, you can go online. They have a Facebook page. You can call them. You can just write out a check to the zoo. Do they make it out to the Zoological Society?
Yes, the Oshkosh Zoo
Okay.
Society.
We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so that's one of the benefits of going through the Zoo Society is that we can then stipend that money and donate it back to the city.
Okay. All right. Excellent.
Specifically for zoo purposes.
So, and so again, they've got a website on the city's website, and I don't know for certain, but I think we've been bringing that up throughout the show. I hope we have, but if we haven't, or if you're listening to us on the radio, just go to the city's website and then click on the zoo, and there is where you can see all the master plans that we've been showing here tonight. You can see the entire master plan concept. It's a very lengthy report. I think it was like 40-some pages or so. It's very lengthy, but it's good reading. It's interesting reading, and you can also see on there how to donate to the zoo. You can find out, if you want, from that website or their Facebook page, how to volunteer with the zoo, how to serve on their board. They're looking for lots of people to help, in addition to looking for lots of money.
Do we have time
We'll
to
take
talk about
anything,
Adopt an
anybody.
Animal for Christmas?
Oh, yes, real quickly,
Yes.
adopt an
That's
animal.
One of the latest programs we have it's called Adopt an Animal. It's a great program really for grandparents or parents or aunts and uncles to adopt one of our animals for a child, for a Christmas present. We send all the information on the animal, a photo, kind of updates on what the animal is doing. We've done that for our grandson for 3 years, and when he goes to the zoo, he looks for Dash, his turtle. He knows exactly where he or she is. I don't.
And
But
people can
it's a-
adopt
it's a
more.
great-
More than one person
yes.
can adopt an animal.
Right.
Right?
It's a great
Absolutely.
fundraiser for us, but it's just a neat gift to give.
So several people could adopt Dash.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
You don't own the animal, and you get your name on the website.
Okay, cool. And we're out of time. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Take care. Keep your eye on us. We've got All Right on Oshkosh.